Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of BritBallin. I'm your host Mike McGugan. I'm joined by my lovely angel of the north, Adam Wilkin. How are we doing tonight?
I'm good, mate. How's it going to my little Manchester beat?
You know me, absolutely buzzing. I think we might not have. I think this will be a good one to watch back as Boris has lifted another set of lockdown restrictions. There's less and less people sat in the house watching our two little faces, unfortunately. So, but thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and I think everyone's here to talk, see, and grill maybe Mr. Warren Smart on the new league alignments and what's going on at the moment.
Nah, he's not getting grilled. We're getting football.
Yeah, true. We are getting football. That's a good start. How are you doing anyway? How's things going?
Apart from my car just absolutely breaking. Yeah, man. Life's good.
You've got a bit of news to share with us, haven't you? Well, not so good news, but something where you wanted to do a little bit of a plug early on, didn't you?
Yeah. So some people that are friends of me on Facebook and things might have seen that our kit at Gateshead for our junior team was took a bit of a hit during lockdown. We keep it in a container. Took some water damage on and things, so we've set up a GoFundMe page to see if anyone can help us get some new helmets and things because they've taken a battering. Like I would say there's probably about 30 helmets there that can't be used anymore. So we've had to get rid of a load of stuff. So if anyone's willing to help us out on the GoFundMe, anything, even just a share, would honestly, I'd be forever grateful. I want to do a massive shout out as well to the Sheffield Giants youth and junior teams, who's put some money in to help us out. It's a massive donation, so I'm honestly forever grateful. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Yeah, and thanks for everyone else who's donated. The link's obviously in the comments there. It's not showing up as a good link on here, but hopefully you can click on there and drop a couple of quid just to help out, even if it's just to support us. So we can keep Adam sane and keep him on the show. That's the most ideal bit. So yeah, thanks everyone again for tuning in. We are going to go deep dive really into these league alignments and fixtures with a good friend of the show now, Warren Smart. So Warren, welcome to the show. How are we doing this evening?
I'm fine, thank you, gentlemen. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Busy time for you then at the minute?
Yes, hugely. Yes, I'm only 21 and this is my new grey look.
I've seen Broken Men before and then you turned up. I do not envy the task you've had recently, putting out what you've put out. So, I mean, first off, credit to yourselves and BAFA and everyone who's been involved in terms of getting, I'm sure everyone can join me in saying thank you for getting some level of football back on the cards. It's a big start for us. 2 years now almost without it. So thank you very much for at least getting us started with something. But obviously it looks a bit different this year than it has before. So do you want to just talk us through that process in terms of just a nice easy one for you? Or actually, I'll tell you do you want to give a quick introduction as to who you are? I'm jumping ahead of the gun here. For anyone who might not know.
Yeah, mate, let him introduce himself first before he tells everyone what the crack is. You know what I
mean? Sorry, mate.
You did promise me a grilling. I've been in BritBall since the very early days. Started off with the Norwich Devils, moved around the clubs of Sussex Thunder, London Olympians, Redbridge Fire, who are no more. A spell at the and started our own team here up in Wembley, in the Wembley Stallions. We've been running for 8 years now, and we're a solid Div 1 team, but we're hoping to grow that. And with the new look BAFA, I decided it might be time for me to throw my hat in the ring and offer a bit of time. And with the usual perfect timing of my entire life, I chose a global pandemic to take up the mantle. So,
yeah, you picked your time well, mate. You picked it very well there, didn't you?
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, at least we kept you busy during a pandemic. I mean, could have been worse, I suppose.
Well, I had a lot of time on my hands, so yeah.
You could have been like us, just winging shows for the past 12 months. Do you know what I mean?
That's what we did. No, so it's a pleasure to have you on. And your role within BAFA is what in particular?
Well, my role is the National Game Development Manager. So the idea was working with Pete. He launched a 10-year plan just prior to the pandemic becoming around, and that 10-year plan is to really look ahead. Most organisations look like 2 or 3 years ahead. What we wanted to do is really take a really dynamic look about what we wanted to do. And obviously that has been put on hold while we've been dealing with what we have. But the role that I came on board to do was look at the sport. How do we run the sport? What do we want to do for it going forward? Are we doing things well? Are we doing things wrong? Are we doing things that could be developed in a different direction? So there's been lots of opportunities, and we have had some success over the last couple of years. So there's been some new elements to what we're doing. For instance, the Forces American Football Association has started. So Army, Navy and Air Force are beginning the process of becoming a league of their own in the same way that you'd see in other sports. Wheelchair rugby is starting. So those kind of new ideas are coming forward. But also we've got things, like what do we do with our under-19s, our under-16s? What do we do with flag football? How can we help develop that? So I have this very broad brush of just helping all the people out who are working flat out there to try and be a little bit away from the coalface. And then during the pandemic, we had a vacancy for the National League, the Senior Adult League commissioner, and it felt that it was a really poisoned chalice to hand on to someone to say, come and become the new Senior League commissioner at a time like this. So I'm kind of backfilling that role until things return to some semblance of normality, and we can then look at restructuring the commissioners and the management structure. So kind of doing two things at once, which is why I've ended up doing all the scheduling and stuff.
Yeah, that is a bit of a poison chalice. Like I said there at the start of the show, don't envy that whatsoever. So obviously, as I was jumping the gun to, so I'll get into now. Obviously, you've been doing your role for a little while now, and obviously that will have changed significantly, as you mentioned there. But as we can see from the league alignments and what's come out this year, we're going to have a very, very different season. So just take us back to that process, because last time we spoke to Pete, he was saying we're going to get some sort of football. The whole point is football. Which, we came to fruition on that. There will be some sort of football, but not to football as we know it. So talk us through that the rhyme and reasoning behind the way where we are now.
Yeah, the problem is we've been planning on sand. Prior to Christmas, we kind of had a plan football as we know it, with the 3 divisions and competition in the National League. And all the the women's, the under-19s, under-16s, the flag and the contact were all looking to do the very similar thing. And then obviously we got hit at Christmas, straight after Christmas, back into lockdown. I think the realization of this being a much longer process of coming out of the pandemic was one that we realized we had to look at things in a different way. So a lot of the decisions we made were being made with the situation as it was then, when we didn't know. It's easy with 2020 hindsight to look back and say, well, you should have done this, you should have done that. But these were the best decisions that we could make as we were going along. So early doors, before we were getting back into things, and before that Christmas lockdown started, we realized we didn't have enough time in the calendar to fulfill a 14 to 17 week season and roll out onto competitions. We also realized that the nations were all going to come back on a different timeline. So Scotland and Wales would come back in a completely different phasing as the English. And it wasn't fair. We're either a British league or we're not. So very quickly, one of the first decisions we made, the BAFA board, Pete, myself, the guys at registration, we decided that a competitive season was probably not the way to go. We also had concerns about people, not playing for a long period of time. How are they going to be? Could we commit people to a 13-game season? What would that do to people's bodies? So by having a season that doesn't have an element of playoffs and championships and is only an 8-game season for most, that was a way of us trying to find the strict balance. And then all the way along, we've tried to be flexible with how we get to those decisions. And then finally, what we did was I met with all the teams. And I had a series of video meetings with in groups or one-on-ones, and the vast majority of teams were, and when I say the vast majority, there's 75, 77 teams, and 70 plus said they weren't comfortable as things were at the time with being asked to travel from one end of the country to the other. If we had, a Birmingham going up to sort of the North Midlands, Sheffield going all over the place because they're a Premier team, etc. So the request was, can we keep this regional and how we would do it? So that set up a new challenge. So the new challenge is, how can we make a meaningful year for teams who are Premier, Division 1 and Division 2, and also we have all the associate teams to get involved as well. And it's not fair. They've missed out probably more than anyone else, because they're on that journey of getting started, and then they get 2 years worth of, you can't do anything. You're going to be an associate team for 3-4 years. So what we've ended up with is a regional-based competition or regional-based structure. The teams themselves have been fantastic. I mean, to a man, the teams have been brilliant. They've been working hard at getting the available dates for their venues. They've had me pushing back at them saying, no, I need another date, or I need you to move this. They've gone, they've worked really hard. And then teams like the Premier teams have really opened themselves up to say, we're not going to come and beat down on a Division 2 team. We're going to manage our rosters the way that we, in a way that we can have a meaningful game that's not about us just coming along and being the Prem team beating down on a Division 2 team. So that's where we've ended up to the situation we're in today.
Okay, yeah, but then throughout, if I'm going to link this to fixtures, I see a lot of the fixtures are kind of, so for example, just in my division in Manchester, we won't be playing the Div 2 team. So have you tried to make that as much as possible where you kind of, the Prem are only playing Div 1, is that unanimous across the board, and then vice versa with associate teams not really playing like Div 1 teams? How have you worked that as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, each group I ranked. So I ranked on the 2019 playing record. And then we spoke to the teams. The teams weren't shy in telling me, no, we're in a redevelopment year. We're not as good as we look on paper, or we're better than we look on paper. And so I would rank them, and then I'm trying to get to 8 games with 6 teams in the conference. That isn't an easy mathematical fix, but what makes it easier is if the number 1 team plays the number 2 team twice, the number 3 team twice, and then the number 4 team twice, and then 5 and 6 they might only play once, or we might say no. Then it's not fair to put them against an associate team or a team that's really back in development. So they might play one of the 2, 3 or 4 teams a third time. So that's why there's been that kind of skewing of the schedule as we're going along.
Okay, and the only thing I can see in terms of the alignments, which kind of stood out to me drastically, really, was really that that London division is a really small division. Was there no thought to, just whilst I've got you, like a Wembley, put a Wembley in there, or a London Blitz B like we see in the North? How come that division is so sparse, really? Because they're now going to only be getting 6 games, in the same with the Scotland B, where they're going to be getting less games.
I mean, the Premier team's based in London. I mean, in some ways they're sacrificing as much as anyone else. The 4 Premier teams are there together. It would appear that they can play their Premier games and keep that kind of competitive quality, but they've given up 2 games to be in that group. They all want to play extra games, and there are people around them that were willing to put their hand up and say, we will go and play against them to give them more games throughout the year. And it's very, very much my ambition to make sure that happens. Those guys shouldn't be penalised for the fact that they are where they are and they're able to play in the group that they are, and that only ends up with 6 games. But what I wanted to do, and again, the guys themselves, or the general managers, or the head coaches have all taken on board that. Let's get these 6 games scheduled, and then as the schedule unfolds, because it's been a huge effort and a huge amount of work to get to where we are today, then we can put in other dates and other games. We can start looking at that, and if the facilities allow, if you can get your venue, if we can get referees, etc. But the ambition definitely is to try and get those guys an extra couple of games from outside of the group.
Right, okay, so that's interesting then. So it will be, I mean, that probably go on to one of my further questions in a bit. You're happy then maybe later down the line for a bit of flexibility for those guys in particular, but maybe even other teams to have that bit of flexibility if there's availability and willingness? Because from my understanding, this has been driven a lot by the teams and not you just saying this is where you're playing. Do you feel, my question then is, it's a bit near to the bone, do you think people have consciously avoided those games because they don't want the trip down? I mean, I wouldn't want to go and play the London Warriors twice, I'll be completely honest with you. I don't want to play them in the playoffs, never mind down there. Do you think there has been a bit of conscious of, we'll just swerve that, and is that the problem with allowing the teams to be in there?
No, I don't think swerving's the right way to put it. I think people have been realistic, what they can and can't cope with. People have got new challenges right now. With teams that haven't played for 2 years, guys, a lot of guys don't know what their rosters look like. I think there's been a lot of surprise that there's been a lot of interest in people coming into the sport. But of course, that means that all the teams across the country are carrying a high number of rookies. And there are guys at the other end of their career who are playing and haven't played for 2 years now, and it's a little bit tougher to get off the sofa. And these are all realisms that we're doing. So I think teams have looked very honestly at themselves. I've had Premiership teams saying, we would struggle in that Premier. If we'd been in a normal year, we would struggle because this is a development, and they're taking it as an opportunity. And what I've encouraged all the clubs to do, and they don't need my encouragement because they're absolutely brilliant at it, but use this year as a development opportunity. Use it to share with the teams around you, so those if you're a Prem team in and around Division 1 and Division 2 teams. Help those Division 1, Division 2 teams develop so the sport is better for it. And then you will be better for it because your rookies, your developing players will get game experience, will get playing time, will get an opportunity to understand what the sport's about. So when we return to normality next year and we realign all the leagues again, every team should, from the Premiership all the way down to the Division 2 team, should be stronger.
And just to clarify that point, that is the plan. So just next year, back to normal, what it was based on 2019 and.
The lineups that were planned for 2020, which are the ones that obviously were established from all the promotions and relegations, that lineup will appear exactly the same, but hopefully with the addition of all the associate teams.
So what happens if a Division 1 team goes and absolutely tees off against a load of Prem teams in a division and looks like they're the mutts nuts, let's say, and then next season they're back in Division 1? Is there no hope that they could maybe extend the Prem if that's the case? Because if some of the Prem teams are classing it as a development year and this Division 1 team's absolutely stacked after lockdown, that's like a year wasted for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what we're not doing at the moment is we're not looking at a wholesale reorganisation of the competition structure. I mean, that doesn't mean to say that going ahead we won't change it, because back to my main role of being development is we will look at ways of improving the sport wholesale, and if that means changing conference sizes, division sizes, then that will all be up for discussion. But as we go right now, we're looking for a return to exactly the same structure we had going as it would have been for 2020. And if there are teams that benefited from the development, then the challenge for them is to hold that position of success and carry it through to the 22 season. But on the backside of that, if a team's struggling this year, it has a year to get itself together so that it's not struggling in 2022. It's a double-ended war.
I just think for me, it's gonna affect things in the sport for a good few years, really. If teams are getting affected at that top end or even at the bottom end, really, of the league, and then whatever's happened, where if you from the pandemic you've gained 100 players or whatever, however many players, because people are watching the sport more, or if you've lost a load of players because of age and a year out, it's going to affect things massively. I think when it comes to actually playing competitive football again, things are going to look very different.
Yeah, and if you were to ask me how that's going to look, I wouldn't know. We've just got to do the best we can this year and help where we can. And we want to hear from all the clubs to hear what they're going through. If they're having success, tell us so we can share it. If they're having troubles, tell us so we can find the help, because there'll be clubs around the country. There are people, the volunteers at the BAFA Volunteers Force, which is an unbelievable force of volunteers. there's lots of people out there who can give advice and support and help, but we're also out there looking for success stories to share.
Yeah, and I think there was some, very much make sense alignments. Like you look at the BAFA Northwest, makes complete sense with who you've got in there. Again, I think the Northeast, I think it is with the Sheffield and the Yorkshire-based teams, for example. But there is a few outliers, and I think one of them was put up in the comments here, which was from Daniel James, which was like, how come the Birmingham Bulls are not in like the same league as Sandwell when they're so close? And then I think another one, how did that decision make? Was it all just based on location, or did you have to think, well, based on my rankings, I've got enough strength in that one, potentially move them into this league? How was something like that worked out?
It was driven primarily from a geographical location in terms of getting the groups together. If for instance with Birmingham, it does feel unnatural for Birmingham not to be in a group with teams that's in its own city. I understand that completely, but it would have left the 7 group very weak, short of numbers, and so you'd have had a group of 6 or 7, and then a group of 5. And I sort of hesitate to call them conferences and divisions, because in my mind I'm thinking that this is completely different to a normal BAFA National League season. It's an opportunity for us to grow. So I wanted. The South Wales Warriors, who in themselves are struggling because they have a 4-week delay in getting onto the field. They have a 4-week delay in getting back into competition because of the Welsh rulings on the pandemic. So we needed to give them support. We needed to give them numbers. So we've got the Storm, we've got Worcester Black Knights, we've got the Aztecs, and Hereford in that group. So we needed to make sure that we had enough numbers in there to give everybody game. And again, another example of people helping out is Aztecs have offered, and South Wales are going to play at least one of their home games at the Aztecs. And the Aztecs have gone out of their way to make sure they get that venue for them, so that they get some football as much as anyone else. So yeah, there's a couple, and the guys at the Bulls, have really had to take it on the chin in terms of being slightly in a skewed situation. But really, what they're doing is
they've had to take it in the pocket as well, because that's going to cost them a few quid moving out of the location.
Well, in truth, what's happened is that because of the group that they were in, or in the conference that they were in the year before, they're actually in a better situation than they were in 2019. They have less travelling miles to do now. If they have if any of the clubs have massive financial problems coming out of this, then they all know, they've all been told by me, get in touch with me and we'll see where we can help. And that might not be opening the purse strings, it might be giving advice. So advice on how they can do things. So,
yeah, another point, not to labour into we might get this a little bit, Warren. Again, this was more from Scud, I think, which is Markham's head coach, as I'm assuming would have been involved in the conversations. Curious how Markham have 6 teams within an hour's car ride and are scheduled to play teams on the opposite side of the country. So looking at their one, they are playing a lot of the northeast teams in that division.
Scud, again, you would pay those thousands to come up and see me, Gated, right? Put it that way, right?
So is there again, is that just falling into the same category of strength and where they would be based on your previous answer? Is that the same kind of thing?
Yeah, very much so. And also and numbers in the group. You'd have a skew if you'd have a group of 7 or 8, and you'd have a group of 5, 4 or 5. So we didn't want that to happen across the country. And this was all, Morecambe were aware of this, and we talked to everybody about everything that went on. So.
Yeah, and I suppose it's one of those things. It's like I remember this from the old Bucks days. There has to be a certain amount of, give and take. If there's 1 or 2 outliers, but there's 98% happy, I suppose that's where like you've said there, you've been open about the Birmingham situation. They're just going to have to take that on the chin this year, and we know it's a slightly different season. Good question here from Jason. Sorry, Adam, I'm taking all the comments from you there.
No, I'll stole it.
Will the Mercy rule be running clocks still apply for 2021 if it's all about development, or would you just be asking teams to, rep guys out at certain points?
there's a new set of guidelines about the rules that are going to come out. So, for instance, the players' box is going to move to the 10-yard instead of the 25-yard line. There's going to be advice over distancing and stuff like that. But as far as the Referees Association, they've changed not as little as they can with the rules, the actual playing rules on the field. So my understanding is, and I don't know the answer to this properly, but my understanding is the mercy rule is still in place. Personally, I don't like it, but I understand why it's there. You know, I didn't like it in a normal year. So, but
and that's
it's a rule.
For anyone who doesn't know, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that's 35 at half-time, rolling clock, second half. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah, as soon as you get to the points.
Just for anyone who doesn't know that. So the question I had then, so I suppose maybe one of the main questions, really, if all of this, and obviously Boris's road plan, Pete assured us that this was done alongside, obviously, the roadmap, then obviously it's what the teams wanted. However, all fixtures are taking place after the 21st of June, in which we was always meant to be out of full, no restrictions, out of it, etc., etc. So why, in hindsight, if it, again, which is a funny thing, if we're out of whole lockdown on the 21st of June, then why would we even have any of this? And it wouldn't just be normal because there's no restrictions to say that we would need to have this. Or is this just something where you just reiterate the point that it was kind of driven more by the teams on that?
Well, also by the fact that the point that we had to make crucial decisions and that were about planning, we had to face the situation we were in. We were all very hopeful that June the 21st means there's no more legal restrictions on us, so that we can all walk into pubs and bars not wearing masks, etc., and hug random strangers. But we know that it's a changing story. I mean, we didn't know as we were making these decisions about the Indian variation. We don't know what's happening in those areas that may be affected by that. So, things are going to change the whole time. And as has been made clear by government, although those legal restrictions are going to be lifted, it will still be encouraged to socially distance. We will still be encouraged to behave accordingly and with absolute deference to the fact that this is a nasty virus. So the rules that we're putting into the game are saying, look, yeah, there might not be any legal restrictions, but it's practical. We don't want to start this all up and go back into lockdowns and things. And organised sport has a very hallowed position in society. You're not allowed to meet in groups of 6 unless you're a part of an organised sport. The government have turned around and said we can treat organised sport differently because it's really important for the society. It's important for mental health. It's important for physical health. I know that with my club, I've got guys, and when I talk to them, they say it's the only time they've been out of their house that week. And every time I have that conversation, it hits you like a brick. You've been, they're still working from home. They're still working off their dining room table or their laptop or whatever. So yeah, I think going forward, we've still got to be aware it's not just going to switch off on June the 21st, and that's why we ended up making those kind of decisions.
Fair enough. It's a very valid point. I just kind of wanted to put that to you, just because when I saw it, I was like, well, 21st, let me go and play Tamworth. You know what I mean? And that's just that from a selfish perspective more than anything.
It was my instinct too. It was my instinct. I'm a football coach. It was my instinct. 21st of June. Let's just put it all back together and do it normally. That was my instinct. But what as the heads prevailed?
That's a fair point. No, it's a fair point. So one of the things that has cropped up from my perspective is pre-season. So I would always look at pre-season as you play your local teams, and obviously you're playing the season against them. So that probably rules that out. What are you advising, if anything, for pre-season games for clubs in order for them to safely play a pre-season game where that is necessary, or is it necessary?
Unfortunately, the timing of it means that we can't authorise pre-season games because we're still in stage 5. Most teams who've been training for a few weeks will be in 5D. We're waiting for the announcement of when we can go to 6, and it's only in stage 6 that we can actually start playing other teams, and having other teams visit our venues. Now, currently, we're thinking that will be the first week in June, and there's only a couple of weeks going till the season starts. So we took a view, again, because we don't know exactly when we can change to stage 6 is that we wouldn't authorise pre-season games for now. We didn't know that we were actually going to be there. Do you want to come out of stage 5 where you haven't been able to do any team scrimmages whatsoever in your practices and get straight onto a field and play another team in a pre-season friendly? So we took the view that we would be more protective and more careful about that and say, that we can't authorise that at this time. So we're all sitting here hoping for stage 6 to start soon, so we can have full team practices.
Yeah. A question that I wanted to say. Well, first of all, I have to really point out that when you done those the calls with the teams, I thought that was a fantastic thing that you done. By the way, getting all the teams and getting their opinions on what was going to happen. I was actually on one of those calls, so I thought it was brilliant. Why didn't that happen at youth and junior level also?
I mean, I can't comment on that. I don't know how those commissioners are approaching the way that they're engaging their teams. They have different styles, I suppose, is the way to say it.
Right, because the only thing I can say on it is I was not engaged at all from it, being a youth and junior head coach, and they've got me in 2 places on the same day, which is physically impossible. I mean, there's enough of us to split in half, but I can't do that. And I just think there's teams with 6 games, there's teams with 10. Like, it's just an absolute shambles at that level. If I'm completely honest, it feels like we've been an afterthought.
For the under-19s, I have started working with Stuart because we share the same referees resources. So unfortunately, the under-19s had to wait for the National League to be completed. We took precedent over that and planned for the schedule to fit the available referees. So we were planning on the referee crews being 21 a day. So over a weekend on any one day, we have got availability to have 21 crews. Obviously, when we schedule the games, where those crews are physically based, geographically based, that affects things as well. But so what I did was I created that schedule, and then I've shared it with Stuart Potts Perkins, who's the commissioner for the under-19s and under-16s. And we then dovetailed in the under-19s programs and kept an eye on what we were doing with the referees. So the schedule that came out for the under-19s was Stuart and I working together. There was a couple of major boo-boos. I literally copied and pasted the wrong schedule in from a senior for a double header, so we had to go back and do that one again. But we got to that as quickly as we possibly could, and then we started issuing, and then we'll get the feedback. The under-16s are less they're less linked to that because they're Saturday-based tournaments.
Well, that's unless you're playing Division 2 with junior also, because then they are directly linked because they're both playing on a Saturday.
They're 7s as well. Yeah, sorry. It shows you that I'm not involved in that element of it. So now that my absolute heavy workload of getting the schedules together is available, and I'll hopefully have a conversation with Stuart and about what's going on there with the under-19s and the under-16s. But that's his bag. He'll sort that out, I know, and he's very, very passionately working hard to do that right now. I spoke to him earlier today.
No, I completely understand that. I'm just saying that for me, for example, this is me just reading it now. 3rd of July, I am in Burnley with my under-19s, and also on the 3rd of July, I'm in Leeds at the same time. So I can't really do that. Do you know what I mean? That's like physically impossible, splitting a coaching staff that covers both those age groups. Because let's be honest, we're all short of coaches. We could all do with 10 more. But for us, we haven't got that luxury. So we run both age groups separately. And it's one of those putting it on the same day where we've done it for the last 4 years now, where we've always said it needs to be on different days, if possible. I understand it's a crammed schedule, but things like that is just, if we had been spoken to prior, like you did with your meetings, we could have brought that up, but that's not the case at the minute. I know that Solent, for example, have got less games than what most other people have at under-16s, which is a bit, again, unfair. I mean, there was a big post on the youth and junior Facebook page that we've got on here. I think Poole Dolphins were in one point and then they were taken out. So it's just things like that where it's just it needs sorted quickly. I mean, I see a lot of teams posting their fixtures now, and I'm not prepared to post ours because I'm sorry we're not going to 2 on the same day.
Well, I mean, my advice to all teams who are in the under 16, under 19 age groups is don't post your schedules now, because these problems have risen, and we will fix them. As I say, I'll go in. One of the things is I'm not the expert here. I knew nothing about scheduling when I started doing this, and I started trying to use League Republic, and then because of venues, because of different numbers of games in conferences, League Republic's scheduling system, which is actually quite good, ended up being useless. So we had to do it completely on a spreadsheet. And you were in that meeting, Adam. You saw that spreadsheet. I mean, it was absolutely enormous. Unfortunately, and this is part of this is I should have reached out to Stuart earlier and told him this was the learning curve I was going through, and helped him make sure that he planned accordingly. That's what I'm going to do now. As I say, I'm not the expert, but I've just lived this, so I have some experiences to share. So if those teams can be patient with what's going on, because it's as you know it's a really tough thing to do, this scheduling malarkey. And secondly, if you can let me and Stuart know all the problems there are with your schedule, but in the same way all the senior teams do it, try not to be quite so cruel to us, because you guys, you showed a lot of patience with me when I was making some horrendous error. But at the end of the day, we put it right. So be patient, but let us know what the problems are, because we can't fix them unless we know what the problems are.
Well, I posted. So I got that email at 12:34 a.m. and I replied at 35. So a minute later, asking for a phone call because it weren't correct, and I still have no email, no phone call, nothing. So just I can't communicate if I'm not getting communications back. So I think it's a bit of an issue there.
And yet we'll pick that up.
Perfect.
We'll pick that up. I mean, copy me in.
I will do. Thanks very much.
But so from just sorry to divert there back onto the adults there, Adam. With the postseason, so you mentioned obviously it's ever changing this. What's the plan for potential postseason? So some people can get some of those games that they desperately want to play, whether it be a local team or whether it be playing one of those London teams, whatever that may be. What's the thoughts on postseason?
Well, we've got there was a couple of the scheduled games. Originally, we set the what you would consider to be the regular season to finish on the 26th of September. One of the schedules was so tight, we literally ran out of refereeing crews. So one of the teams is playing a game on the 3rd of October, and that will be their final sort of regular season game, part of their 8. But we have the 3rd and the 10th of October open for us to arrange something. We don't know what quite yet. You can imagine I've not had a moment to think about whether they're what a post season would look like. As we touched on earlier, the Premier teams in London have requested extra games, so we're going to look at that for those dates. Also, we've got, as we get out of this the lockdown and the pandemic, and we can open up and it can become less regionalized. The teams that have actually sacrificed their competitive year, so like the Giants or the Titans or whatever division you're in, might look to say, well, do you know what, I've done this all year long, I'd really like to see what's happened against a Premier game, so maybe the Titans and the Giants can play a game later in the year. If people have been asking me to do that recently, like a pre-season joint scrimmage, I've just said, no, you can't do it. You just get, if we're either regional or we're not, it would look terrible if we suddenly allowed teams to travel across the country when we've said what we have. But later in the year, that can change. Now, is that a promise from us? No. What it is a promise is we will look at it and we will do the best we can. And for instance, we've not talked much about the Scottish teams, and the Scottish teams have their own challenges, and they've had to they've had to design their own roadmap back into the sport. And again, their cooperation and their willingness to help one another has been amazing. But you've got a Premiership team sitting in Scotland who has to play Division 1, Division 2 teams. They might want to travel south of the border and have a game there. Similarly, we've got Division 1 teams who are all getting better and are looking to compete, so they might want to travel a bit further afield. And whenever we're talking about travel, I always think about the Hastings Stags and the Aberdeen Roughnecks, who just look at me as if I'm an idiot, and they go, yeah, to go out and get a pint of milk's a 10-mile journey. I'm doing 700-800 miles in one direction just to get to the closest rival. So, those guys take that on the chin without thinking about it. They know it's part of their existence. But we want to be able to open up at the end of the year and see if we can operate as many more games as we can.
Okay, so just for clarity there's no promise, but there's a couple of slots maybe at the end of the year where either teams can organise themselves or BAFA might organise something to fill those couple of weeks.
Yeah, because I've not had enough of scheduling this year.
Yeah, I was going to say...
I'd like to do some more scheduling.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, I can see a nice board behind you, and I'm sure you'll be getting some more schedules on there. I just don't want you to run out, Warren. That's the thing, obviously. Adam's fired a load of junior questions at you, which is nothing to do with you. But we want you to do that as well. I can bring up some flag stuff as well if you'd like, and women's, anything you would like. And
can I just say the reason I fired those questions, right, is because Warren's done a cracking job at the schedule for adult by getting in contact. The communication is what we've cried out for years. So Warren, cracking job so far, mate. Honestly, really appreciate what you've done so far by reaching out.
2022 fixtures out by next week. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Well, I can touch on that. I know, my predecessor Clive, and before him Russ, they did a fantastic job at getting those schedules out earlier and earlier and earlier, and having schedules before Christmas when you went into that year was, absolutely, really, really, it was useful for me as a club manager and as a club head coach. And that's what we're going to return to. The membership of when you apply to be a member for the 2022 year, within weeks you will be asked to supply in exactly the same way we did it this year, what your home venues are, when you can play that following year, and we will do our level best to get that schedule out before Christmas so that you guys can go away and absolutely plan. One of the things we launched over the year was a thing called the national calendar. I've gone into seasons over the years, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've gone into seasons, and I've been in week 3, and I didn't know what date the final was, because it hadn't been organised. And what we realised that we needed to do was plan ahead better. And I talked about the 10-year plan, but that currently the national calendar runs 3 years ahead. So all the commissions for all the genres know 3 years ahead when their finals are going to be, so that we can actually start planning. So that's something that I think that's come out of this. It's been an opportunity to do that, and I control that calendar. It's not mine to put the information in. I just control that, make sure that it all matches, so that we're not scheduling a national final on the same day we're playing Sweden away in the Euros or whatever.
That's it, Warren. I've just fixed your scheduling disaster out. Don't worry about it. I've got it for you. So for those 2 weeks, what you could do is around like a 2-day tournament kind of thing where you do like Prem All-Stars or North East South, Div 1 All-Stars, North East South. Give Scotland their own team because it's Scotland, isn't it? And then and just do that Div 2 North East South All-Stars. I think that works.
For anyone watching in Scotland, we do love you still. Please be watching, like, share, subscribe.
So yeah, just if you could get that sorted as well. We've already badgered Jason with it. Pete knows about it, so no pressure, lads. But if you could just sort that one out, that'd be a nice way to finish the year. I'm out of questions. Adam, have you got any more?
There is one other thing that I need to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
We have been always given the convention weekend free of games across the board. This year we haven't. So this year I'm talking youth and juniors have both got scheduling clashes with the coaching convention. I know it's an online convention this year, but it's still a clash. Is there a way that we can get that fixed?
This year, with all we had, one of the conversations I had with Mike Callan at the national program was, can you please on pain of death, not organise anything national programme during our regular season because we haven't got the space for it. So the national programme guys have been brilliant and said, right, we will organise everything so that there'll be trials or whatever it is that the national programme is going to do. They'll be starting in October, so that hasn't gone away. But there were things we couldn't do. We couldn't give up an entire week when we had 294 games or something, 264 games to schedule it in the National League alone, and then you had all the other divisions or all the other genres of sport, the women's, the under-19s, etc. And we just couldn't give up a whole week for it. And so the coaching convention going online, they'll work out their schedule to make sure that the games can go ahead on whatever they're scheduled to go. You can fit into the conference as and when the program allows. And then next year we will try to do that again, because it's a really important thing, because we have to develop areas of this sport. We have to develop the referees, and they've been brilliant. We have to develop the coaches. We need more coaches. We need better prepared coaches. And if we're going to do those things, then one, we need to support recruitment, and two, we need to support retention and development. And the coaches convention is vital for that, and we have to support it. So in future years, we will move to a free weekend. Just
obviously this year it's on between the 9th, 10th and 11th of July, and there is games scheduled there. Both myself, Mike, example, we've got games, and we're actually hosting it or helping to host it on BritBallin here using our software. And if I'm down away in Leeds, the convention's not happening, mate, because I've got it on you. So it's one of those where if someone had been in touch, I would have said I can't do this date because I'm doing the convention for you guys. So
we need to get you and Stuart in a room together, a socially distanced room. That's what needs to happen, I think.
Or
we'll do you one of those white collar fights by the sounds of it.
No, I like Stuart. Stuart's a great guy, but I just need a ringers. Just ringers, and we'll fix everything. Honestly.
No, I completely agree, Warren, with the coaching convention. I think moving forward, and it's one of those as well. It's one of the things I was thinking should potentially happen as well, is for the players to organise something from themselves, some sort of players' association or something where they can come together as well to talk about those kind of things. So, like you said, it's all about developing the game. But I'm very conscious you've spent past 16 months talking about football scheduling. I think we'll leave you to it. I think you've done yourself proud there. It's great to have you on and great to talk about the thought process and the decision making behind it. We're not always all going to agree on it, but at least we've got some level of football to get on with, and at least hopefully it provides a bit of clarity for everyone as to why we got to that decision the way we got there.
No, honestly, for me, Warren, honestly, I think you're doing a cracking job. Even just reaching out to the teams before anything was going on, that is massive leaps and bounds. Honestly, brilliant. Well done.
Well, thank you. And I mean, it sounds glib to say it, but I absolutely mean it. It was the teams that made this happen. I was just the secretary on it. They went out and spoke to their venues. They worked out, what their budgets are going to be, how many players they're going to have, when they can and can't play. When I was pushing for things to happen, they stood up to me and said, "No, we can't do this. We can do that." And not just me, the people in BAFA, they have absolutely blown me away. The guys in registrations, the guys on the board. We have a new volunteer coordinator, Ken Eaton, who's doing a fantastic job giving the volunteers a kind of a professional platform on which to work and develop from, because we do this, a lot of us, we all do this for free, we all do this for love, but we can all do it in the most professional way. And the guys who are doing this, are doing a fantastic job and in a professional way. And I think it's showing. I think the website looks fantastic. We look like we've fixed League Republic to make it look like it's part of what we're doing rather than a League Republic sole platform. So, we think things are moving forward. So I literally am a cog in this massive machine, nothing else.
No, good work, Warren. Thanks very much for coming on, and hopefully next year it's plain sailing for you. But in true British American football style, you'll always get that. Cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on. Cheers, Warren.
No worries. Take care. Thanks, and good luck to everybody.
Cheers, mate. Bye. So there we go.
Easy as that, isn't it? You know what I mean?
League alignments. tick. Fixtures, tick. No, I can't. I understand where they're coming from, and I think there has been an element of, for me personally, I think there's been an element of, like you said there, people choosing that. Well, it's easier to do this localized, kind of alignment from club's perspective.
Listen, they're in a no-win situation, right? If they had waited and we went into lockdown where you're only allowed to stay local again, everyone would have said, well, we could have played local games.
Yeah.
If they had opened up earlier, well, you should have done your National League again. Yeah. And it's one of them where they've planned it out. They've got something drawn up, and you get to play football.
Get football. That's all that matters.
Let's be honest. The games are going to be as competitive as the teams make them on. Let's be honest. You can only play the team in front of you. Have you heard that phrase? How many times have you heard that phrase?
Yeah.
Come on.
I think, like I said, I think everyone's got at least one or two games on the schedule where they can really get a good competition game out of it. And then, you get to see a lot of the Div 1 teams, for example, get to play against that Prem standard and see where they sit. And your question was really valid. Like, what if they overperform? Well, it gives them that confidence, doesn't it? It does bust a few myths as well, Would that bottom Prem team actually beat that top Div 1 team? Would that Div 2 team who's gone undefeated this year but lost a silly game in the playoffs actually beat some of the local teams? And I think it'll bust a few of those myths. It should be interesting. It's how it used to be done in the old uni leagues and stuff. So for me, as long as we get some sort of game at the end of it where you can choose to play, one of your really competitive games to see where you've stacked up against the year or whatever, I think, I think there'll be some interesting games. Like I said, Sandwell v Tamworth back-to-back will be great taster for the Prem season ahead. Yeah, I'll keep my eyes on that one for sure to see the result of that one. There's nothing stopping regional travel, is there? So I can go and watch it. It's a BritBallin special.
Yeah. Oh, got to do that. We'll be doing that this year. If you want us to come to your venue, give us a shout.
Give us a shout and pay for our petrol and buy our girlfriend's flowers.
And also hot dog and a pint. We'll be there.
It was sucker for meat and beer.
As long as I don't have to be in two places at once because of youth and junior football, then I'll be there.
You should peel the splinters out your ass about that. You was really sat on the fence. I didn't know which way you was sat on that. I couldn't get whether you.
Mate, it's physically impossible to be in two places at the same time, man. How can I be in Burnley and Leeds at the same day? Like, are we having like a late night kickoff or something? Am I taking them all, doing a round trip of it? Like,
get better, get better, mate. Get better.
Yeah. But on the other hand, if you're looking to get coaching experience and you fancy coming down to Gateshead, I'm looking for coaches because it's not.
Nobody needs that. Nobody needs a plug for Gateshead. Come on, bring yourself back in.
I've had enough. I'm staying off.
Right, that's it. An hour on the dot.
Done.
See you later. Thanks everyone for joining. See you next week for a show that we've got really well planned out. And we won't discuss it after the show. See you later. Go and donate to Adam's team.
Please help. We need helmets. Or we can't travel to any game. Take care.
Bye you all.